In the lesson for today, we'll be looking at Economics Paper 1, May-June 2024 examination. This is to assist you in preparation for your May-June 2025 examination, will be Economics Paper 1. It is important to understand that this paper is for the candidate who are writing National Senior Certificate Examination. The past paper was extracted on the website of Basic Education, Department of Basic Education for the Republic of South Africa. If you're new to my YouTube channel, can you please subscribe to my channel, and the profile pic you will see, it is the profile pic that is displayed on the slides. As a matter of introduction, my name is Ayanda Fortunate Mkhize. I'm a qualified chartered accountant with an inspiration to assist the learners to do well in their studies. Now let us look at what we have. We are looking at section B and specifically question 2. And question 2 looks at macroeconomics. So at macroeconomics part of paper 1. In this paper, what you will see, there will be matters that we need to outline or describe. We will need to list. There will be graphs that will be provided that we need to analyze and respond to the question that will be asked. And also there will be scenarios that we need to read and respond using the scenarios provided or scenario provided. So how are we going to do about answering this question? As we go through the question, I will remind you what the term means or what the question asked is about. Then we'll move to the solution that we have. Now let us look at questions without spending a lot of time with more theory or details. 2.1, we need to answer the following questions. 2.1.1, name the two factors that determine the size of the multiplier in the two-sector model. In order for you to understand and be able to answer this question, you first need to understand the multipliers or the two-sector model. Now let us remind ourselves, in a two-sector model or household and firms, the multiplier effect refers to how an initial change in the spending, either by the household or the firms, lead to a large final change in the aggregate income and the output. This effect is driven by the fact that one person's spending becomes another person's income, which then leads to further rounds of spending. The size of the multiplier is determined by the marginal propensity to consume, which is MPC, and the marginal propensity to save, which is MPC, right? So now you understand what is the two-sector model. The two-sector model, it is household and the firms, and then also what are the multipliers? It's marginal propensity to consume and marginal propensity to save, right? So this should be your response. However, we're still going to look at the solution and see if we were correct by saying it is MPC and MBC. So each of the naming will have earned 1 mark because it's 2 times 1, and then you get 2 marks. By simply saying MPC and MBC, you would have earned 2 marks. Now let us look at 2.1.2. How can South African Reserve Bank or SARB use open market transaction to increase the money supply? Again, I want us to understand what is SARB and how they can use an open market transaction to increase money supply. The South African Reserve Bank or SARB can increase the money supply through open market operation by purchasing government securities or other eligible assets from the commercial banks. This action injects liquidity or money into the banking system, increasing the reserves available for lending and ultimately boosting money supply. So what does that mean? If the Reserve Bank, they take the money that they have and they buy either the government bonds or they buy the securities from the bank, it means that they are taking the money that they have and spend it to government or the bank. And then there will be more money for the bank or government to on lend to the public. Then that means that there will be more money supply, or they'll be able to boost the money supply or increase the money supply. How it works, they take their money as SARB and then they buy the bonds or they buy any security from the bank. Now that the banks, they have more money, then they can be able to lend to the public either in the form of personal loan or car loans or even the houses. In that way, there will be more money that is available to the public. Now, obviously, we're still going to look at the solution and see whether we are correct by saying that. Now, let's look at 2.1.1. Here's the solution. So, the solution is saying marginal propensity to consume, MPC, or marginal propensity to save, MPC. And the question was name two factors that determine the size of the multiplier in the two-sector model. We were correct by saying it's MPC and MPC. So what is important here, you were supposed to only provide or list those two, right? Therefore, you only have 1 mark for the first one and 1 mark for the second one, right? Either you provide the abbreviation or you provide the full name. So depending on the day of the exam, whether you remember the full name or you remember the abbreviation. If you remember the abbreviation, do not waste time by trying to provide the full name. Just provide the abbreviation. You will still get a full mark. And the question number 2 was, how can South African Reserve Bank use open market transaction to increase money supply? How can SARB increase the money supply in the market? I've explained to you that's the way they can increase the money supply is that they buy government bonds and securities in the bank. Therefore, bank and government, they have more money that can lend to the public. So in that way, they'll be able to increase money supply. And then let's see what's the solution. Buy government security or bonds from the bank, thereby injecting more money into the banking system, which will increase money supply. So we were correct by what we said when we're looking at the question. Now let's see what we have next. In our next reading, 2.2 says, study the graph below and answer the question that follows. So here I'm going to assist you in terms of how to analyze the graph and also respond on the questions that follows. Now let's just look at the graph. In this graph, we have 0 and we have -1 and -2, and then we have positive numbers to 6. When we're looking on the other side, we have Q4 of 2021, Q1 of 2022, Q2 of 2022, and Q3 of 2024. And we're given these blocks in the graphs. So these blocks, we need to understand what do they mean. All those blocks will need to understand what do they mean to us. So when you're looking at the first block, which is this one, the grayish one with the dot, and this one, and this one, and this one, it means durable goods. And then when we're looking at the second one, which is white one with the light gray dot, it is a semi-durable goods. And then when you're looking at this one, this one, this one, and this one, it is non-durable goods. Now let's just analyze the graphs now that we know what they mean. If we look at Q4 of 2021, everything is above 0. And then if you're looking at Q1 of 2022, everything is above 0. And when you're looking at Q2 of 2022, we see a change. And then if you're looking at Q3 of 2022, we also see a change, but mainly on durable goods. And then when you're looking at overall, this is a real final consumption expenditure by a household for South Africa on this quarter. So the last quarter of 2021, the 3 quarters, 1, 2, and 3 of 2022. Now we've seen and analyzed the graph. Let us see the question that follows. Question 2.2.1, identify the category of consumer goods that recorded growth in the third quarter of 2022. Q3 2022. So in brackets, they are summarizing what you would see in the graph above. Now, where's Q3 of 2022? Q3 of 2022, it's this part of the graph. So now we want to identify the category of consumer goods that recorded growth. So in order to see growth, you need to see what happened in the previous quarter. So in the previous quarter, it was quarter two of 2022. If we look at what happened in the quarter two of 2022, all the goods were below zero. However, when we're looking at quarter three, we see an increase in durable goods, and then we see that the other one stays below zero line. In that case, it means durable goods which are seen as dark gray and light white dots, they have seen an increase. So when responding then in your answer of 2.2.1, it should be durable goods based on the fact that we saw an increase from just below -1 to close to 1 in the following quarter, which is quarter three of 2022. Now, if they're saying give an example or give one example of durable goods, we are asked to provide only one example. Please provide one example that you are confident about. Do not provide more than one because you are wasting the exam time, and it is most valuable in the exam in order to ensure that you are finishing all your paper within the 2 hours that you'll be provided. So before we even answer 2.2.2, I want us to understand what are non-durable goods. So non-durable goods are products that last less than 3 years or are consumed quickly. Unlike durable goods, which has a longer lifespan. They are often bought by the consumers for immediate use or short-term consumption and include items like your food, clothing, or gasoline, which is like your oil. Non-durable goods, on the other side, tend to be purchased regardless of the business cycle, making them stable component of consumer goods. So that's basically when you're looking at a comparison between the two. Non-durable goods are goods that have a very short lifespan and they're normally consumed or bought to be consumed after they have been bought. And I'm going to make an example of non-durable goods. Your non-durable goods will be your food and beverages like your milk, bread, fruits, vegetables, or packaged drinks. It could be your clothing and footwear like your t-shirt, jeans, shoes, and socks. Could be your personal care products like your soap, shampoo, toothpaste, and deodorants, or your perfumes. Your household item like your cleaning supplies, paper towels, or disposable diapers. Your fuels, which is like your gasoline, diesel, and other type of fuels. Your paper products, which is like your paper plates, napkins, and paper towels. So if you're looking at all the items that I have listed to you, you would have you understand that they are not expected to last longer than 3 years. Even the clothes, because one might dispute and say, but the clothes last longer. I do understand that the clothes last longer, but if you buy a t-shirt and you're aiming to use it every day, it will never last you 3 years. For that reason, it falls part of non-durable goods. And think of milk. If you go to the shop to buy milk, you have a limited shelf. It has a limited shelf life in terms of when I expected to use it, which is why it has expiry date. If you're looking at the milk that you buy in the shop, they will tell you after this date, it would have expired. Now, let us look at how you respond then. Your response will either to say it's food or beverage or clothing or footwear or fuel, whatever that you feel comfortable on or you like to write. But remember, you need to only write one. Then let us look at the next question. 2.2.3, briefly describe the term consumption. Before we even look at the solution, I would like to remind you what is consumption. I know you would have learned in the class because we are doing revision here. However, I want to remind those that would have forgotten what the term consumption means. So consumption, in general terms, it refers to the act of using resources, goods, or services. It encompasses the intake of food or drinks, the utilization of products, and the spending of money on various items and services. So in economics, it's often defined as the final purchase of goods and services by individuals, also known as consumer spending. So what does that mean in in short or in a way that everyone understand. A consumption, it means that you are going to the shop to buy the milk and you use that milk to make a tea. So by using that final product, which is milk to make a tea, you are consuming the final product, which is meat. So here you are briefly describing. Since you are describing, you have been provided the 2 marks. So that 2 marks is available for you to describe. So you're just describing one term, which is consumption, and you will earn 2 marks for your description. Now let's just look at 2.2.4. Why are savings regarded as leakages in the circular flow model? Now let's just understand why the savings are regarded as leakages in the circular flow model. In the circular flow model, savings are regarded as leakages because they represent money that is withdrawn from the economy spending stream. Rather than being used to purchase goods or services immediately, this reduced spending can dampen economic activity and lead to lower national income. So think about, you receive your salary of 10,000. In this 10,000, you decide that 2,000 you're not going to be spending. You'll just save it in your Capitec or net bank account. So what generally does that mean? It means that you are taking that money to save and it's not going to be used to buy your milk, to buy your clothes, or whatever you have used that 2,000 to buy for. In that case, it is reducing the national income because it is not used for any consumption. For that reason, the savings or the money that you're saving in the bank, rather than using, it creates a leakage in the circular flow model. Now, 2.2.5. How can an increase in interest rates influence household in the circular flow? Right. So you need to understand how the increase in the interest rate influence household in the circular flow. Again, let us look at interest rate increase and understand what impact does it make in the economy, or rather in the circular flow. An increase in the interest rates can influence household in the circular flow of income by making borrowing more expensive and create savings and potential reduced spending, which can lead to a decrease in household demand, affecting the overall economy. So what happens if the Reserve Bank decide to increase the interest rate from 10% to 11%? It means that now there will be less money available for your parents to spend, because now they're going to spend more money servicing one asset, which would be a car, or one asset, which will be a household. Now they will have less money to spend because they need to pay more on their houses or cars than they were previously paying for the very same item. There will be no change in the items they are paying for. However, the money or the premium they pay monthly would have went up compared to last year or compared to last month. So now what does that mean? It means the money that they would have used to buy vegetables, to buy clothes, it's no longer available because now it's used to service the debt. So what will normally happen? Because if the interest rate goes up, the interest rate on savings will also go up. Now your parents will even be more encouraged to save because now they will get more interest income on their savings and there'll be less money available to be spent. Right. Now we have discussed all those questions. Let us see what we have in the solutions. So now we have solutions. 2.2.1, it was saying identify the category of consumer goods that recorded growth in the third quarter of 2022. And then they showed us Q2 2022, which was as per the graph. And I said to you, it is durable goods. When we look at it in the graph, we were correct. It is durable goods. Now, 2.2.2 says give one example of non-durable goods. We went in depth in terms of what is non-durable goods. We discussed that non-durable goods are goods that are expected to last not longer than 3 years, and we spoke about those type of goods. And then if you're looking below here, we have food, beverages, and fuel. And those are goods that we spoke about when we're going through the definition of non-durable goods. Therefore, it means that we're also correct when we're going through the discussion of the non-durable goods. Question number 2.2.3, ask briefly describe the term consumption. And then consumption, use of final products and services to satisfy human needs, the act of using resources to satisfy current needs and wants. You recall when we were going through the question, I said to you, if you go to the shop and buy milk and use it in the tea, that is consumption. By looking at the fact that the reason that people are consuming services or products is because they want to satisfy the needs or human needs. By you making tea using milk, you are satisfying your need of thirsty or willingness to consume caffeine, which is the tea with milk. So we were also correct on stating that. And that is 2 marks that you would have gotten or you will get if you were to get the same question in your exam. 2.2.4, why are savings regarded as leakages in the circular flow model? Savings flow from households to the banking system, which reduces the amount of money in circulation. Savings reduce the flow of money that would be spent on goods and services. Again, when I was describing or when we're looking at the question, I said to you, if you take 2000 and save in the bank, that means that 2000 you would have used to make consumption, buy either clothes or milk or food, whatever you would have bought with 2000, but you decided to save it. By saving that money, you are reducing the national income because you're not going to be using that money to go buy in Shoprite, Jets, Pick and Pay, you name it. So by looking at the solution that we have here, again, we were correct when we were looking at the question. 2.2.5. How can an increase in interest rates influence households on a circular flow? Household will borrow less money from financial institutions due to higher interest rate. Consumers will buy fewer goods and services as credit becomes more expensive. Household will receive more return on saving that have flexible interest rate or variable interest rate. You recall when we were going through the question, I did describe around this line, or I did discuss with you around this line when we're looking at this question. So how much you are going to earn or how many points you need to raise. So in terms of the points that you needed to raise 2 points, and per point you were going to get 2 marks. So what I would have suggested you raise, you talk about the credits are becoming more expensive, and then household would decide to save more so that they can increase higher interest rate. What is coming next? So what is coming next is 2.3. I have stated to you in some cases we're going to have to read the scenario and respond to the questions that will follow. 2.3 says, study the extract below and answer the question that follow. The privatization and restructuring program in South Africa. The South African approach to privatization has been one of the restructuring of the state-owned enterprises. The goal of restructuring has been to reduce government borrowings requirements and to extend private ownership to historical disadvantaged groups. However, little has been achieved as restructuring efforts have been slow and reluctant. Right. So, what do we understand from reading the scenario? So in this scenario, they're saying when the government decides to privatize the state-owned enterprises, it's one of the restructuring method, right? It's through privatization. And they're saying the reason they're privatizing the SOEs, it is because they want to reduce government borrowings. That means there will be cash injection coming from these private companies and they would not need to borrow more money. And also, they're saying the additional reason for them to go through privatization is to ensure that there is ownership of historically disadvantaged group, which is generally your black individuals. what they're saying now, they're saying with all the efforts they put through, there is still a battle in terms of achieving the full potential of this restructuring effort or restructuring model. Now, I want you to understand what is state owned entities. Your state owned entities are entities that are either fully owned by government or majority owned by government. And I'll give an example of those entities. It will be your ESCOM, who is the energy provider or the electricity provider. And think of your Spornet. I think it was before maybe you were born or you were young, or Transnet. Transnet is the company that provides transportation like your through sea or rail, which is your trains. So those two are example of your state-owned enterprises in case you do not know what are the state-owned enterprises. So that's the reason I am telling you. The 2.3.1 identify a term that refers to parastatals. So we are looking here and we need to respond which term here that refers to parastatals. Is it restructuring or is it SOE? The correct answer, it is SOE. And I will tell you why it is SOE. It is SOE because parastatals, it's used to describe a company or organization which is owned by the country's government and often has some political power. I've already stated to you the SOEs are your companies that are either mainly owned by government or partially owned by government, right? But majority is that the government own those companies. Therefore, the correct answer is state-owned enterprise. Let's look at 2.3.2. Give one feature of public sector failure. So I want us to understand what is the public sector failure. So one prominent feature of the public sector failure is the lack of accountability in resource allocation and the decision-making process. This can lead to inefficiencies, waste, and corruption, undermining the effectiveness of the public services. So the reason that the public sector fails is because some people that work in those organizations, they lack accountability. For example, a person that is responsible to make purchase, maybe a project manager, might decide not to purchase the correct item they need to purchase for the production in the SOE. By doing that, that means they are failing the SOE in terms of delivering the correct product or service to the users or the consumers of those products. And they will not be held accountable for the deciding not to buy the correct product. So that is why we're saying the failure is the issue of accountability and also in issues of inefficiencies. They are inefficient in most cases, not always, and not all the time, in terms of delivering the product. And also, you'll find out that there's no effectiveness in the things that they're doing when it's come to delivering the public services. So just to summarize that, it's the issue of inefficiency, accountability, effectiveness in the public service. 2.3.3 briefly describe the term nationalization. So I want you to understand what is nationalization. So nationalization in economic terms, it is process by which government takes control of a private business or industry, becoming its owner, often with or without compensation to the previous owner. This means shifting ownership and control from private heads to public, right? So I'm going to give you an example of how the nationalization could work. It is when government decide to say, Capitec, it is a private company. However, it is servicing a lot of black people or government people, whatever you call it. And then they might say, we prefer that we nationalize Capitec. It is therefore no longer going to be a private company. So in doing that, then it means they're nationalizing the Capitec Bank because now it's going to be owned or partially owned by government. They might decide that they're going to buy it meaning to say they'll buy the entire shares of Capitec, or rather they'll say, no, we're not going to buy it. However, we believe it is for the best interest of the public that it become nationalized. 2.3.4. Why is it important for the government to remain in control of key input sector such as energy and transport? What is energy? Energy are things like your electricity, and the provider of energy, it is Eskom, and Eskom, it is a state-owned enterprise. That means government is still in control of the production of energy. And when we move to transport, we are looking at companies like Transnet. Transnet, they are providing the rail transport, which is your what do you call it? Is Dimela, right? So they're providing your rail transport. So by providing the rail transport, it is controlled by Transnet, and Transnet is also SOE. So in that case, we can understand they're still in control. And what is the reason that government will want to stay in control of the SOE? So the reason that government would like to be in control of the SOE is because that benefits the government by reducing the financial. Okay, again, so the reason they would like to stay in control is because the key input like energy and transport is crucial for several reasons, including ensuring affordability, accessibility, and equitable distribution of essential service, promoting national development, and mitigating potential negative impacts like market failure and monopolies. So what does that mean? It means they know that if they are in control, if they are in control of this industry, they're able to set the price that is affordable by the number of people in the economy, right? So what do we require them to do here? You just had to state why it is important to make sure that the product that is Eskom provide, which is electricity, and also rail transport provide, which is in this case Transnet, it is affordable. We all know that rail transport is affordable to many individuals because it's cheaper. So if it were to be privatized, the chances are it might be more expensive to people that are using the rail transport on the day-to-day basis. Same with the energy supply, which is electricity. You know that electricity, it is a little bit cheaper in township compared to places that are more or are of the people that have better resources in terms of money. So the reason that government is taking control of energy, they want to make sure that everyone is able to afford the electricity. So that is the main reason that government want to remain in control in the energy and transport sector. 2.3.5. How can South African government benefit from the privatization of the state-owned enterprises or SOEs? So privatization of South African state-owned enterprises can benefit the government by reducing the financial burdens, improving efficiencies, and potentially attracting foreign investment. Privatization can also promote economic growth and development by fostering competition and attracting private sector expertise, right? So now, what do you know about privatization? Privatization is when government decides that the portion of the SOEs will be sold to the private individually. By doing that, it means if they were previously owning 100% of Eskom, for example, now they'll be owning maybe 55% or 60%, and 40% will be owned by the private company that has expertise in the production of energy. So by doing that, it means they will have cash injection that will come from the sale of the 40%. It means they'll be able to settle some of their debts and not go out to borrow extra money, as they will have more cash available. That's the first benefit. The second benefit is that they will get expertise. That means the people that are coming to buy 40% of the stake in Eskom, they have experience which will assist Eskom in terms of doing better production in the electricity production. I think is the companies, either foreign companies or other private sectors, they hear that the portion of Eskom is now privately owned, they might be interested in even buying shares or engaging with Eskom better or more than previously they have been engaging with Eskom when it was only owned by Eskom or government alone, right? So what are we looking at is that there will be more money available, or it will reduce the burden of Eskom in terms of debt. Number two, expertise. There will be more expertise from the individual that have decided to buy certain portion of the ESCOM. And then obviously the third part is that it will be attractive to both the local and the foreign investors. Now we are moving to 2.4. 2.4 said discuss the role of household in the circular flow model. So you will get what you're going to get is 8 marks. 4 times 2, then meaning to say you need 4 times 2, so 4 points, then 2 marks each. Now, in the circular flow model, household play the dual role of consumer and resource provider. He purchase of goods and services from firms and simultaneously supply firms with factors of producing like labor, land, capital. This dual role is essential for the continuous flow of economic activities. So, what our households are doing? Think of your mother that works in the farm, right? So when they wake up in the morning and go work in the farm, what are they doing? They are either going to the garden to produce your vegetables, right? So those vegetables could be cabbages, could be fruit, whatever they are producing. And then subsequently, those vegetables that were produced by your mother's labor will then go to the shops. When they get to the shops, your family will also buy those fruit. So now, how is this flowing? Your mother is providing labor, and then subsequently is buying the products that your mother has produced. So now you can see now there is a duality or double service provision from your mother. First, by going to work in the farm, and then subsequently buy the products. So discuss the role. So we look at the solution where the number of roles will be described, and we'll see that whether there is a linkage between what I have discussed with you versus what we have in the solution. 2.5, analyze the factors that may cause a deficit of South Africa's balance of payments, or BOP. So let's just understand what is the balance of payment in South Africa. The balance of payment deficit in South Africa can be caused by a combination of factors, including trade deficit, increased capital outflows, and decline in foreign exchange reserves. Specifically, a large trade deficit is driven by high import demand or weak export performance, can lead to a BOP deficit. Additionally, capital outflow due to factors like a rising interest rate abroad and political instability can also contribute to a deficit. So, what does that mean? In the country would like to be in the position where they are making more export than import. So what does that mean? If they're making more export, we are getting more money in South Africa because we are selling outside the country, right? So, but if we are buying, meaning we are making more import, we are taking the country's money and giving it to China or USA, whoever is our trading partner. So now, if you are making more imports, we are creating deficit in the country. However, more export, we are creating what we call surplus in the country, which is what we would like to have. Now let's look at the solution and see what we have there. So our first question is 2.3.1. We're asked to identify a term that refers to parastals. We said it was SOEs and the solution is SOE. That means we're correct. Number 2, we're asked to give one features of public sector failure. You're only required to provide one, right? That means only one you would have provided. And when I was going through the question with you, I spoke about ineffectiveness of the public service and inefficiency of the public services, and as well as the issue of accountability. If you see here, we have all that. So only one you would have provided ineffectiveness or inefficiency, and then you would have gotten one. Then 2.3.3 briefly describe the term nationalization. We had spoken that nationalization is when they take the private sector company and make it public sector or government owned. Then Let us read what we have here. Transfer of function and ownership of entities from private sector to a public sector. When the government takes ownership and control of an existing enterprise in the private sector. You remember I made an example of government deciding that they want to take over Capitec. So in that case, they are privatizing Capitec. And when we're looking at the transfer of ownership here, it is therefore correct what we explained when we were going through the question. 2.3.4 Why it is important for the government to remain in control of the key input sector such as energy and transport. When we're going through the question, I spoke of Eskom as well as Transnet, and I did explain the reason they want to remain in control. It is because they want to stabilize the price and ensure that the resources are always available to the public. Now let us see what we have in the solution. The government will be strategically positioned to control the cost of the key input to production, such as electricity and transport, which will minimize the cost of doing business in the economy. To promote price stability and allow all households to afford goods and services. To promote infrastructure development, which may be overlooked by the private entities. So you are only going to get 2 marks. So meaning to say only one solution you need to provide out of those three. So when we're looking at this question, at the question together, what did we say? We said it because we want government want to make sure that these resources are affordable to different number of households. And we made an example by using electricity as well as the rail transport. 2.3.5 How can South African government benefit from the privatization of the state-owned enterprises? And I did discuss with you a privatization, and basically when government sells portion of their company, and I made an example of Eskom to say 40% is sold out to the private company that has expertise in the energy production. And then I did discuss to you that the reason that they will do that is because they want to have more money coming to the business, and they're also looking for expertise that they will gain from the individuals that will be buying 40% stake in Eskom. Now let us see the solution that we have here to see whether we were in line with what they have here. The government can raise income, foreign exchange, from the sale of public entities to the private sector. We were correct on that. We would have gotten 2 marks. The tax base will expand and the government will raise more tax revenue to spend on economic projects such as infrastructure development. So this one, we didn't get it right. However, what does it mean? It means that now when they make money, when the private sector make money in the production, or when the government declares dividends, that money will be taxed. Then more money will be raised by government, which in this case will be SARS. The government will have less administrative burden on the operation of parastals. Why? They have less administration burden because now 40% stake is owned by private, and then the private will also take some administrative role of the company. Privatization may reduce the fiscal pressure in terms of financial bailout and loss-making parastals. The government can use privatization to promote the development objectives through lack of economic empowerment. So what does that mean? If they give privacy disadvantaged individuals to participate in the economy or to participate in the industry, it will mean that they are contributing to BEE. Then 2.4. 2.4, we are asked to discuss the role of the household in the circular flow model. And I did discuss with you that the household in the circular flow model, they contribute in the input as well as output. So how do they contribute in the input? It is when they provide labor or land, and how in the output is when they make purchases or make consumption. Now let's read what we have here. Household own the factors of production such as natural resources, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. They sell factors of production to business for the production of goods and services. Household buy goods and services with the income that they received from their factor services. They save part of their income with financial institution, which ensures the availability of loanable funds. And they pay direct taxes such as personal income tax to the government from the income that they earn. Consumers pay indirect taxes such as VAT and excise duties when they buy goods or services. Households may invest their income by purchasing assets such as shares and properties to accommodate wealth. They borrow funds from financial institutions to buy goods and services, which stimulate aggregate demand. So, when you look at the information that we have here, the majority of it I have stated. However, I've stated it in summary or in strategic level. What does that mean? It means I spoke about when they provide labor in entrepreneurship and also when they make purchases. In addition to that, you must think of the fact that they pay tax and they save money, which becomes available for people that want to lend the money from the banks. Now let's look at our last question. Our last question was 2.5, and 2.5 says analyze the factors that may cause deficit in South African balance of payments. So, what caused deficit in the balance of payments? It when, for example, we are making more import than export. Why is that so? Because if you're making more input or buying from outside countries like US and China, it means we are taking the South African money and paying it over to US and China, which will be the countries we are trading with. So then, the decrease in the domestic production may result in less goods and services being exported, creating deficit in the current account. Low economic growth in South Africa's trading partners such as US and China may reduce demand for South African exports, which would lead to decrease in value of export. Decrease in supply of goods and services on local market may increase import, which will increase the deficit in the current market. Decrease in the export price and increase in the import prices may lead to less export earning and higher import payments. Removal of import restrictions such as tariffs and quotas may increase the amount of import, thereby increasing deficits in the current account. Shortage of capital goods such as machinery and equipment in the domestic economy may result in more import of such goods. Unfavorable climate conditions such as drought may decrease domestic production, contributing to less export and more import. Appreciation of the rand may increase import as they become relative cheaper and or reduce export as they become relative more expensive. Depreciation of the rand may increase import payments, increase deficit in the current of accounts. Accept any other correct relevant response. So what does that mean? Any response that is in line to deficit in BOP will end mark. Allocate a maximum of 2 marks for mere listing the factor. So now let us look at this in overall term. What does that mean? So if we have lack of production in the country, it means that we're going to have less export, then less money that you are making from selling outside the country. If the countries who buys from us, like US and China, they do not need a lot of our products because of low economic growth, that means that we're going to have less export or less sale to them. Therefore, we are not really making any money from them. Also, if you're buying more from them, it means that we're not making much. Because those two countries, for example, which is US and China, they're using their own currency. If our currency decide to depreciate against them, what does that mean? It means they will make more purchase. However, we're not going to be making so much money because our currency will be weaker at that point, right? So you need to understand what they mean, So if you are making more sale, you are making more money. But if you're making less sale, what does that mean? You are making less money, and less money means deficit. The end of this paper, and thank you so much for listening up until this far. I will be doing another question. Please follow me on the channel for more questions of this nature. Thank you so much and all the best with your economics paper 1 paper.